Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Wednesdays with Watson podcast. It is June of 2023. It is also PTSD Awareness Month, and I'm here today with one of my dear friends, Rachel Marhefka. Both of us live with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And Rachel is here today, not only as my friend, but as an ambassador of hope for those of you who are living with PTSD or complex PTSD like we are. We want to highlight the hope and the help that comes from Jesus, that comes from the star of the story. We want to highlight community. We want to highlight church. And we're going to do that today. If you are out there and you have PTSD, you do not want to miss this episode. So Rachel, welcome to the Wednesdays with Watson podcast. I should say, welcome back to the Wednesdays with Watson podcast.
Thank you, friend. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, you know what? You prayed over the podcast right before we got on, and I felt that prayer. And I think that I want to lead with that, is that those of us living with PTSD have to lean on the star of the story. And I have spent, Rachel, we will be to our 100th episode very soon, which is a big deal in podcasting. And, I've tried to provide information and resources on PTSD for people, but there's no way to do that without the hope of Jesus. And so thank you for being here today and representing the hope of Jesus. So we're just going to go for the juggler here, guys. So Rachel is a representative, I believe, of Generation Z, and I am Gen X. And one of the things that really fascinated Rachel and me as we talked about this episode is there are some differences in the way that we have dealt with our trauma. And we're going to talk about that. And so, Rachel, I'm going to give you the first question out of the gate to me. And so I would not do this with many people, give the microphone to somebody else to ask me a question, but I am excited to have this organic conversation with you today as we try to help people living with PTSD and CPTSD out there like we are.
Yeah. So as you just mentioned, we are from different generations, and growing up for me, the stigma and the shame around mental health wasn't nearly as prevalent as it was for you guys. Growing up. So I just want to know, and we'll jump into more of your story later. I'm already getting ahead of myself, but I want to know for you growing up in your formative years, because even without all of that stigma and shame surrounding mental health in general, you already have a incredibly hard story, an amazing story, obviously, as we know, but also very hard. And so I want to know what that was like for you growing up and how it impacted your healing, because I just want to know. Tell me what that was like.
Yeah. Well, man, what a great question. Gen Xers are different. It's if you want to get a good laugh, just go on TikTok and look up the hashtag Generation X, because we are a different species. We are feral cats. So while my story is really hard, Rachel, they actually had to make a commercial for our parents that said, "It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?" Okay. So I just want to lead with that.
Latchkey generation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. We didn't come in until the street lights were on. Our parents didn't care where we were. And so when you add that mindset, I was actually raised by, I guess my mom was a boomer, but she was actually even pushing the greatest generation. But so I was raised with that, like boomers raised Gen X kids to just basically go outside in the morning, drink out of water hoses, maybe come home for lunch, maybe not, but then to also come home when the streetlights were on. So I wanted to set that up, because when you add then a parent like I had who was not there for me and sent me off to places where I was harmed, I didn't know anything to do, even my first memory of my first abuse at 7 years old, except for to get up and go. And so that's what I did. You are working on a piece of art for me that I've asked you to sketch for me about that first trauma, because I deeply remember just after that horrific night when I was 7 years old with a serial killer, with Henry Lee Lucas. I just walked down the stairs and I went went on my peanut route. And then after I sold peanuts, I went to the store and got some food. And that's the way I operated until I was about 35 years old. I would get a hit and I would just get up. I would get a hit and I would just get up. And I would just kind of for some reason, Rachel had this hope that one day it would all stop or that it would all get better. And so when you add the stigma, especially in Generation X, of mental health issues, it just wasn't even talked about. You just got up, rubbed some dirt on it, and went on. And that turned into a nervous breakdown for me at 35 years old. So may that serve as a cautionary tale to those of you out there listening. If you don't pay attention to trauma, it will pay attention to you.
Body keeps the score.
The body keeps the score. So does that answer your question? Did I effectively answer it?
Yes.
For your okay.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it was really for Gen Xers everywhere. They know what I'm talking about. Like even good parents sent their kids outside. And so when you add a not good parent,
Yeah, for sure. Dang.
Yes.
So like initially going to therapy, was that hard for you to accept?
Yes.
Like, like I need help. I need, support.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because when I was taken away from my mom by the state of Florida, they made me go to counseling, like a real therapist, like not in the biblical counseling lane or anything like that. I don't remember much about that. The next time I remember going to counseling was when I was deeply, 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 deeply enrooted in my domestic violence marriage. And I knew that I wasn't okay. And even then it was a lot of, me just telling them my trauma, like I am giving you directions to the bank. And so counseling did not become really effective for me until my first appointment with Dr. Pettit. And a week later, I ended up in the hospital with a nervous breakdown. Now, that's not a very good sales pitch to go to counseling, but
no, but you allowed yourself the room to break down. I think that's like,
yeah, I wish I could say I allowed it. I think it just said, you know what, Amy, it's time.
True. That's very true.
I was teaching high school. I had a job that in a Christian school. Thank God it was Calvary, because so many other Christian, and I'm air quoting, would have, I don't know, but they would not have treated me as kindly as I was treated at Calvary. Those, the teachers, all of them donated one of their vacation days for me so that I could go to 30 days of intensive outpatient therapy after I got out of the hospital. And then when they realized that I wasn't okay, before the school year even ended, they said, hey, we're going to honor your contract, but you go take care of you. And so I will forever be grateful. But it was counseling, and it was getting into a good church where people were watching me. Some very good friend of mine and yours that we share, Cheryl Rice, was watching me. She's the one that took me to the hospital. And so, the long answer to how did I receive counseling is it just highlighted the need for me to get more help, because at 35 years old was the first time that I processed any of the trauma instead of just getting up and rubbing dirt on it. And so Gen Xers out there will really, really understand that. And maybe Gen Z, if you have parents who have been through trauma, maybe that will help you too.
Yeah.
Because hurt, you know what I'm saying? Hurt begets hurt. And if we don't stop that generational curse,
And I kind of like, it's funny because even though I am a Gen Z, I kind of identify as a millennial, but we're not going to tell anybody that. But my dad is a silent generation, and my mom is what comes after that. I think she's boomer, right?
Yeah.
After that. So like even though the stigma and the shame wasn't as big or wasn't as prevalent when I was growing up because of the generations of my parents, and within the home it was. So I totally get the rubbing the dirt on it and then not processing it until, later in your journey when, but yeah, especially for us, like you said, we absolutely relate, those of us who have parents who
that's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that, having parents that weren't boomers. So yeah, that greatest generation. So both of us, our mothers were born they would be towards the end of the greatest generation. And those people had been through some stuff, right? That generation, my mom, who was born in 1933, lived through the Great Depression. Now, she was from a very affluent family, and I don't know how much she was affected, but it is interesting. I hadn't thought about that in the context of this conversation, is like the generations of our parents. Yeah, that's why we're loving this organic conversation. Well, now it's my turn to ask a question.
Okay.
And this one is definitely where I see a huge difference in our generations, and that is self-harm. Now, the actual definition of self-harm is, I did plenty of that, right? But not like your generation did. Like when I first started teaching at Calvary, and I saw students wearing long sleeve shirts in August, never even occurred to me. And I had teacher friends of mine who said, hey, watch for that, because that probably means that student is cutting, which just blew my mind. Like, I didn't understand, and I still don't understand. And I know that there are people like me out there who don't understand. Can you share your journey with self-harm with us and how it's related to your trauma?
Yeah. I was actually really surprised when you shot me this question, because I don't think I've ever been asked about that in this. I just don't think I've ever been really asked like this before about it. So I had to think about it. But to be completely honest with you, as far as like understanding it, I don't think we understand it either. Like those of us who do participate, or even our generation really understands it. There's science behind it. I know that, some people have connected, like after you cut yourself and you immediately feel better, it has to do with the endorphins that are released. Like the same thing with like going to the gym. I don't know if that's true. I do know that it's the same for almost all of us, though, that after we cut, we feel better.
Yeah.
I don't know why,
Do
but
you remember the first time you cut?
I do. I don't, I remember being, I can't tell whether I was really mad or whether I was extremely like sad. I was probably a mix of both. I had just gotten in an argument with my parents or something. I don't remember what it was. It was probably something small. But well, okay, no, I take that back. If I cut myself afterwards, it probably wasn't something
I was going to say,
small.
it's probably not something small.
I just don't remember.
By the way, let me just highlight something here. Hold that thought for a second.
Okay.
What you just did is classic PTSD, where we minimize the trauma.
It's true.
That's just a side note, because it is PTSD Awareness Month. And so that is such a hallmark of somebody with PTSD. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. It's true. And I caught myself after I said it. I was like, oh, don't say that. That's not right.
Yeah.
But I remember having a couple friends that I knew of, one or two friends that had done it. I had never really thought to, because I just didn't really think to. But then one time I had one of those like really long mirrors, like the full length ones, and I'm really clumsy, and I fell into it once and I busted it. And I let it, and I'm also clumsy and I'm a little bit lazy, so I let it sit there for days. Like a week went by, and this like, shattered mirror is just sitting in like a corner of my room, and I didn't think to clean it up. But then after the argument happened, I remember noticing it differently. And so I just noticed, and then I wanted to feel better, and I'd heard of my friend who did it. She felt better, so I did it. And I did feel better. And after that, for a long time, it was a spiral, I guess, where that became my thing. And it became more frequently. It became more like heavier, I guess. But I didn't know why I did it. I would get my, my mom would catch me sometimes, or like she would find them, and instead of, she'd get upset. So it wasn't like, so then I hit it more, and I kept doing it because I felt better. I don't know why, but
that really does help me understand. And that was one of my sub questions on that, was going to be like, how did you even know to do that? And so, yeah, I'm guessing, obviously you heard about it from one of your friends did it. We just, maybe I'm weird for Gen X, but we just never heard of it. And I do get it. What my generation does in terms of self-harm, or what I did in terms of self-harm, is that getting up and putting dirt on it, getting up and putting dirt on it, getting up and putting dirt on it. Now, that didn't make me feel better. There were definitely no endorphins there. And so most of us, at least I, as we know, well documented on this website, decided that some substances would help me feel better and help me numb. Because guys, what happens when we feel the need to release this pain is we are wired to not be in pain. Like I had shoulder surgery almost 9 weeks ago now, and everybody's laughing at me because when I go to do something, I am still very guarded. Even at physical therapy, they're like, stop guarding it. I'm like, it hurts. They're like, pain doesn't mean harm.
Oh,
Mic drop. I was like,
have to chew on that one.
right.
It's
And then
really
that
hard
is,
for me to digest.
oh, same girl.
Like, just like
Same.
wrap your head around that. Pain doesn't mean harm. And I'm like,
Same. Yeah,
no.
like it's like,
Are you
and
sure?
so I'm doing, yeah. Where
you
did
sure?
you go to school? Yeah, like where did you go to school, Mr. Physical Therapist? Because I'm not sure you're right about that. They're like, yeah, just push it till you get to that 5 or 6, which that pain scale is always funny to me anyway. I'm like, clearly you don't know me because I can't measure what a 5 or 6 is because this is also an issue with the dysregulated nervous system and PTSD. We don't feel that stuff, So that was just it is so phenomenally interesting to me. And those of you out there listening who just want to get out of the pain, that is not that's not the easy way out. I know it feels like the easy way out, but it's not the easy way out.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I don't know. I
I
wanted
love
to say
it. You
something
and you,
about
babe.
like, I was just thinking, sorry, I was thinking about how like a lot of times in healing or when we're in pain, we just want it to stop immediately. And a lot of times for me, even when I was out of high school and I wasn't cutting frequently anymore, there have been times where I've been in flashbacks and I resort to that
Yeah.
because it's the instantaneous gratification or the instant pulling me out of this storm that I'm in.
Yeah.
But just to encourage that instant gratification isn't always what's best for you in the long run.
Yeah. Because you
Don't
know what I
just,
do? My version of that right now, Rachel, is I just don't stop.
yeah.
Like I'm in a season of life that's been very difficult. And people look from the outside and just shake their head and I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just living. What are you talking about? Because it's deeply, deeply embedded in my subconscious to just go, 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 go. As of the
You're a
recording of this
cheetah.
podcast, I'm a cheetah. That's right. And boy, am I ever having some cheetah moments. And that's a great reference to an early podcast in season 1 about how the cheetah will run until they can't. And I did have a situation. I was in the hospital in March from running. And so that is my version of it. And I like Rachel encourage you. This is going to sound like the worst advice ever, but you got to sit in that pain. And we're going to read what Rachel and I both agree is the PTSD patient Psalm 91, but you don't have to do it alone.
It's true. It's true.
There is,
It's so easy to forget that too.
amen.
So easy to forget that when you just get like everything else is swirling around in your mind and it just gets like you get tunnel vision. That's a good word for it, tunnel vision. And so you just forget.
Right. You forget. And that's why we want to remind you. And that's why we're here
Exactly.
today having this conversation. And I think that self-harm just looks different in both generations. That just needs to be understood. And I think that listeners will resonate with both of our answers to that question.
For sure.
And now for the terrifying flip of the mic.
Let's jump back to you. You just mentioned you were in the hospital a couple months ago, or was it a couple months ago, or how?
Yeah, it was in March. Yeah, the end of March.
Which is a great segue into PTSD. The body keeps a score, how it affects your health, because there are physical symptoms that manifest, right, with all the psychological and emotional stuff that's going on. And I know it can affect everybody's different, and it can affect people's health, affect people's health or differently. I know it's affected my health, but I want to know how it's affected yours. We relate a little bit on those things too.
Yeah, and this was it's funny because this was a question we sent each other. So I'll answer it, and then I'm gonna flip it back to you. Yeah. So both of us have been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and some listeners may or may not know, but I am currently pursuing a doctorate degree in educational psychology, and I'm loving it because it's going to make this podcast so much better because I'm coming to you with information that I'm learning. But yeah, The Body Keeps the Score, great book, great read by Vessel Van something. I never can remember his name. I always slaughter it on this podcast, but The Body Keeps the Score is the book. How has it affected my health? Well, like I mentioned, I was in the hospital, but I have 4 autoimmune diseases, Rachel. One of them is celiac. Yeah. One of them is
4.
Yeah. One of them is celiac disease, which I showed no symptoms of or anything until that nervous breakdown. Basically 2 years after that nervous breakdown, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. I have lupus. I have Hashimoto's, and then they call it reoccurring mono, but it's Epstein-Barr. And then this falls under the health umbrella, and it also falls under the Gen X umbrella. Like, I was never taught to take care of myself. I was never taught to actually eat 3 meals a day. Most people that know me know that I'm in a season of life, and have been for the last 3 or 4 years, where I struggle with keeping weight on. And so it affects me in that way. Like, when my nervous system is all jacked up and the trauma is triggered, which is a word that is so often overused, but is appropriate in this conversation. My body feels like if you try to put anything in me, I will revolt in full force. And I will not accept it. And so what I've had to do is pursue nervous system regulation, which I'm working with the PA in my psychiatrist's office, which is, we just spent 30 days focusing on, and YouTube viewers can see this is a Stanley cup that I bought because we were focusing on hydration, feeding, movement, and sleep, all things that need to be grounded, but need to be super grounded in people with PTSD. And we had to write it down. And I was not drinking. I might have been getting 8 ounces of water a day, may have gotten 1,000 calories in a day. And then when I started counting, it was like, whoa, no wonder I feel so bad. And so it is not at all like second nature to me to take care of myself. And that is part of that is my nature. Like, I am other people focused, and that doesn't make me a good person. It just makes me how God designed me. And it also takes the attention off of me so we can just help somebody else. I will admit that, but it has profoundly affected my health. Profoundly. I have a heart issue that was a result of my domestic violence marriage. And yeah, it profoundly affected my health. And it is a source of potential resentment and bitterness to God for me, because my life has been hard enough, and I hate that my days are just as hard. In order to be healthy, you guys and I say you guys, most of you out there listening, you just get up and you drink your coffee and you do your things. I get up and drink my coffee and go, oh, okay, maybe I should drink some water. Now maybe I should put in some food, and sometimes I do better than others. I'm grateful for like these boost shakes that have almost 600 calories in them, because sometimes that's literally all that I can put into my body when my body is so activated from the trauma. And this year in particular, 2023, has been very difficult for me. And so I've been on high alert a good majority of this whole year, and we're in June. And even as we speak, my heart rate is higher than it needs to be. Heart rate variability is crazy. I have this Aura ring that, tells me how I'm doing, because I have no way to know how I'm feeling. My body doesn't hear the signals. And so my Aura ring will literally tell me, as it did today, and I can't listen to it because I have to do things, but it literally says, yo, time to rest. Do you want to put your ring on rest mode? Most days when it does that, I can honor it. Today, I can't. The very long-winded question, profoundly. And really, Rachel, the source of, like I said, potential resentment and bitterness for me more than what was actually done to me.
Yeah.
The result of what was done to me is now I have to live the rest of my life. And our friend Cheryl, who I know will be listening to this, and so shout out to her. But like I I was watching Ellie Joe for them, and every time I go over there, she literally fills the counter with gluten-free stuff. Like she goes to the store and like tries to pick anything that she thinks I might eat. And this has been a characteristic of Cheryl Rice from way back when I taught at Calvary, when she would bring me crackers for lunch because I wouldn't bring my own lunch. So I'm grateful for that, but it has profoundly affected my health. And it is very difficult for me to stay on the right side of forgiveness, and which we're ending a season on forgiveness, on the right side of framing it. And so I hope that answers your question. It's kind of long-winded.
No, I appreciate it. I love all your words. It absolutely did answer my question. Thank you.
How about you? How's it affected your health?
Well, I'm a little bit different from you. None of the things that I struggle with, I can this is probably me minimizing again, but none of the things that I struggle with that are my health issues, I can confidently say are a direct result from my trauma. But eating, I'd get you on the eating thing. That's been, and I'm more realizing in this present season of life how much of an issue my eating is. I didn't really realize how little I ate before. Because to us, it seems like we're eating too much. Right. I don't know if it's like that for you, but I'll eat maybe one meal a day, like 1.5 if I'm, being good. And then I'll feel like I ate 4, and the next day I will use, my husband actually caught me. He was asking me if I was hungry, and I said, well, I had this yesterday. And he was like, you're literally using yesterday's food as an excuse not to eat today.
Oh, ouch.
And I'm like,
oh, that hurt me. That even hurts my heart.
You're right. I am. But at the same time, anyway, yeah. So the eating thing, feeling hungry, especially when your nervous system is activated, is so hard.
Yeah. Do you feel like does your stomach feel like all the time you just ate Thanksgiving dinner when you're in an activated state? That's what it feels for me. Like my stomach feels full. Like I just ate like the biggest dinner ever. And so it doesn't occur to me to eat because I feel full. And that is because of an activated nervous system. Do you feel that way?
I wouldn't say it's full. I would say more like it's that jittery feeling.
Yeah.
I'm jittery. And I guess, yeah, I'm full, but not like Thanksgiving dinner full. And so a lot of times it's like my body won't even send me the cue that I'm hungry, or even just like on a normal day, I have a touch of ADHD, so I forget to eat a lot of the time. And it'll be like 2 o'clock before my body sends me the signal, hey, you haven't eaten today, you're hungry. It doesn't send me that in the morning. Or like, I also have some heart issues. And an irregular heartbeat. I don't know what that's from. It was already pretty bad when they found it when I was a sophomore in high school. So we can say it was, pretty confident it started early on, but to say for sure what exactly it was. But that does change if I'm triggered. My heartbeat, absolutely. I also have GI problems, like digestive tract issues. I have to take some stuff for that, because if I don't, then I do feel full all the time, because I don't know, something to do with the digestive tract. But yeah, so day-to-day wise, it's the eating thing is definitely my biggest. And I don't fall in line with, like, I don't know if you do either, but a direct like eating disorder. Like if you look at the list, like it's more like I fall into that disordered eating.
Same. Yeah. So, I'm actually staring across the room at the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistic Manual for Mental Disorders. And when I got that book from my class, I actually looked up eating disorders, because I was like, no, I don't meet that, because I'm not anorexic. It's not I'm afraid I'm going to get fat thing. It's none of that. And so, yeah, it's more disordered eating and a very difficult relationship with food. You know what I'm saying? Which seems really weird to say, but yeah, it's this really, really difficult relationship with food. Like I told my PA in my psychiatrist's office, is like, I literally wish that there was a pill that I could take that had 2,000 calories and I don't have to worry about it. And I know some of you listening are like, I wish I had that.
Or like a power bar.
Yeah, something.
The shakes are amazing.
The shakes are
like
amazing. They're a
smoothies.
god.
Ugh.
Yeah, they're a godsend. And I know there are listeners out there that would say, I wish I had that problem. Please don't say that to us.
Mm,
Please don't say that to us.
yeah.
Because the reality is people who overeat with trauma, it's 6 in one, half dozen in another, right? That, there is some very specific science, which we don't have time to get into, about overeating and trauma, insulating yourself, protecting yourself, making yourself unattractable, those kinds of things. Yeah. So that's the health questions. I think so. I asked you, it's your turn.
Okay, okay. Let's
Oh boy, I'm scared.
I'm trying to pick between the two that are in front of me. Um okay, I'll pick the less heavy one first. I got
Okay. Yeah, because my heaviest for you is the last one too. So
Okay, cool. I think we're talking about the same one. Great minds think alike. So, kind of jumping back to how you grew up, you went to college. I didn't.
yeah.
That's something I really wish I had finished. And I feel like if I could go back now, I tell myself this more than I would like to admit, but I think about if I were to go back now and do it over again, oh my gosh, I would do it so differently. But you went to college, you went on to get the PhD, right?
I have a master's
No.
degree pursuing a PhD now. Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
But
So
like, how did you find the stability
yeah, that's a great question. Really great question and a timely one.
and decide to do all of that?
Yeah, it's a timely question too, and I'll share
It
with you
is, you're in
why.
school now.
Yeah, I'm in school, but the one thing I had going for me up until a couple years ago, I would have said this and really meant it. And so just hear me out, because I know you're going to be really tempted to interrupt me, because it's what I'm getting ready to say is not going to land well with people who love me. Okay. But I used to say, at least I'm smart. Like I felt like I hated looking at myself in the mirror. My older sister has curly dark hair with green eyes, dark olive skin, gorgeous. And we used to always say she was the pretty one and I was the smart one. And going back to that Gen X thing, because I was a good student, graciously, I loved school. I had an uncle who stepped in, my Uncle Lloyd, who died my freshman year of college, was a man. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and he would take us for summers. And there was just never a question as to whether I was going to college or not. And he fed that love of learning that I still have to this day. He also paid for me to go to a Christian school. And so academically, I was set up really well to go to college. And then when I went to the children's home, this is funny because people that know me are going to die laughing with this. When I went to the children's home, the curriculum there was a curriculum called Accelerated Christian Education, and basically it's booklets that it's self-paced, and they teach you they teach it and you do it and you take a test and you move on, and it takes 12 paces to complete a high school credit. So I went there the summer after my freshman year of high school, and that my sophomore year, I finished everything I needed to do to graduate. And again, that's just that: pick it up, rub dirt on it, keep going, keep going, keep going, numb the pain, numb the pain, numb the pain, perform, 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 perform. And that has really served me well in life. It is a terrible coping mechanism, but it has served me well in life. And so I went to college, because I love to learn and I was a good student. But when I was at the children's home, and as of the recording of this podcast, we lost Dad McGowan last week. But I will never forget, I was enrolled to go to this other Christian college across the state, Pensacola Christian College. And anybody that knows anything about Pensacola Christian College and knows me knows that I would have lasted about 2 days there and got kicked out. But one day, Dad McGowan called me up to the front of the tour bus where we were. And he said, I want to know if you'll pray about something, because he taught us to pray. He taught us to have faith. And I said, well, of course. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Dad. I will pray about something. He said, I wonder if you will pray about not going to Pensacola Christian College, staying here, working at the home, and going to Clearwater Christian College. And I said, yeah, Dad, I'll pray about that. Well, I wasn't going to pray about it. All I wanted to do was please them. And so I acted like I prayed about it. And so for a couple of days, I didn't pray about it. I said, Dad, yeah, I'll go to Clearwater Christian College. He said, good, because you have a 4-year full ride scholarship. And I think that's why a lot of people with trauma and in situations like mine don't go to school because finances, they have to go work, they have to begin adulting really, really quickly. And what dad did for me was essentially protect me for another 4 years by letting me work at the children's home while I went to college, because there was no way I was ready to go out into the world. And so because of that, I didn't make a lot of bad decisions that people that left the children's home at 18 did. And the podcast before this talks about the advice that dad gave us all. And I recorded that and published it before he died. Didn't even know it was before the event that led to his death happened. It was just the way the Lord had ordered it. So the answer to your question is people, again, community. I went to college because people saw something in me because, like I said, we always said my sister was the pretty one, I was the smart one. And there's a reason why somebody said I was a smart one. There are test scores and, other indications that I might be fairly intelligent. And so I had that going for me. And then certainly a full ride scholarship was helpful. And then my years at Clearwater Christian were beautiful. And so it just was a Joel 225 moment, the acceptance of a 4-year full ride scholarship at Clearwater Christian College, and best 4 years, really that whole 12-year period when I was at the children's home and in college. Just an amazing redemptive, restorative time in my life, even though I was still coping improperly. Because then when I was in college, of course, I had 2 jobs and was carrying a full load and all the things. I graduated on time. And so I love school. I had been taught to be a lifelong learner by my Uncle Lloyd. And then I had a community of people that said, let's grab this one, because this one we're all redeemable. But this is how we're going to redeem Amy's story, is we're going to help her be educated so that she could get out into the world and support herself. And so the short answer to that question after I just pontificated is I had a community of people, from my Uncle Lloyd when I was just little to Dad McGowan when I was 18, that saw something in me, a flash of something that would be well served by being well educated. And here I am pursuing my doctorate degree, only because I want people to call me Dr. Watson. I presume.
Oh, I love that. What an amazing story, and an amazing legacy that he left. Is that the right word? Legacy?
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there are a few of us all over the world. We will find out Friday how many. Not many of the kids went to college, I will say that. And so that is not unusual. Your experience is not unusual. I just did because I had that. And so, yeah. Okay. So now, I know which question I want to ask you now. This has been really interesting. I want to know this. So you just celebrated in March your first wedding anniversary with Michael, who I just adore. And he is representing the 5 on the Enneagram series on YouTube. He's amazing.
Oh, I love him.
Oh, I hope so.
I love him so much.
Tell me what the first year of marriage was like for you with PTSD.
Overall, it's been great. Specifically with PTSD though, it's been, I feel like, and this could just be like, I'm my 4, like different than everybody else, but our experience has been quite different from your typical, I feel like, first year of marriage, where it's like the honeymoon phase, because both of us, he and I both have our fair share of, baggage to bring in, where we are learning each other and working with each other to try and love each other to the best of our ability, of course, with the Lord's help and strength, because we couldn't do it aside from him. But I will say that right after I got engaged, I was very afraid. And after I was actually really depressed. I texted Cheryl and I was like, is this normal? Like, is this what? I feel like I should not be feeling this way. I felt like a sense of dread. I felt, and I feel like I think that followed me into our marriage. Because for me, growing up, my parents did not really paint a picture of what a healthy marriage looks like, a healthy Christ-centered marriage. So all I had to go on was them.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking marriage was something that is completely not what it is. So I've been pleasantly surprised throughout this first year, but definitely I feel like because of my trauma, I've I've disassociated a lot this first year because for numerous reasons, fear and I still ask him all the time. I'll ask him like 5 times if he's mad at me about something. And it's something so little. Like if I have an allowance, because he works, I'm a stay-at-home wife, so I get, an allowance. And if I go buy something with it, I'm afraid I'll come back and he'll be mad at me for it, or like he'll yell at me. And so I'll ask him, and he's pretty straight faced. Like he's a really calm, you've talked to him, he's really calm and like just stable, I guess. He has RBF a lot of the times. So I'll be like, are you mad at me? And he's like, no.
Well,
But that's
so
just
quiet.
part of my, like, that's just one of the ways that my trauma comes out, I guess, is just constantly asking if he's mad at me, or
Just needing to be reassured that,
a lot of overriding has to be
right.
done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so and like, bless him, he's so wonderful. I am so blessed to have married such a good man. And to be honest, that's one of the things I want to mention. The reason I married him is by the sheer grace of God, because like, if you had told me 5 years ago that I would have been married to this like wonderful, godly man who does his best to love me out of his love for the Lord, who leads our house strongly, and I would have laughed in your face had you said codependent and unhealthy and toxic. I would have been like, yeah, that's more my speed. Like
Emotionally
that makes
unavailable.
emotionally unavailable. That makes more sense. But the reason I married him is it's the Lord brought him to me. He listened to the Lord when, and I fell right in line. But yeah, it's been.
I'm so grateful, and I think it's really important to highlight here something. Well, I mean, you kind of just did, so I'm feeding off of you, but it is so important for every woman out there to marry. Chrissy's mom, who I call Mama Bootsy, used to say, you could deal with a good-willed man, right? Like you could work with that, and you could get through just about anything with a good-willed man. And then you add on top of that a man who loves the Lord and loves his wife as Christ loved the church. What Michael doesn't realize, and this has been, I've got people in my life, not a romantic relationship, but friendships in my life, that just by doing what you just described, like my friend and my business partner and my sister from another mister, and now my roommate Chrissy, same thing. She's so good about just kind of coming alongside of me and understanding when there's been a trigger, or when I'm responding out, or I should say reacting, and so patient and so kind and able and really helping me understand, hey, Amy, what's real? My favorite question to her is, tell me what's really going on. And oftentimes I won't know the answer to that question. But she will steadfastly, and this is a woman who doesn't like a lot of words. Like we all know I got all the words, but she will talk that through with me. And so for those of you out there listening, and significant relationships, whether it be romantic or not, in my case, Chrissy is one of my best friends in the whole world and part of my redemption story. But having somebody that you live with or that you do life with, and again, we're bringing back in that community component, is everything for those of us with PTSD, for sure.
It's true. I would not be where I am in my healing journey if I had not met him.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hey, Michael. All right, so we're ending with the heaviest questions each of us have before we read Psalm 91. So deep breath, Amy.
It ended this way.
It's your turn, right?
Then we get in the word. Oh, okay.
Oh, wait, no, I think it's my turn. Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
You just asked me the marriage question, so no getting out of this one, girl. It is my turn. Bouncing the mic back to you. So we're similar in a lot of ways, and in the way that our PTSD shows up, but our stories are very different. One of the ways is that your trauma makers are gone from this earth. Mine are still here. Tell me about that. What's it like for them to not be here anymore, and what's it like for you to heal?
It's funny because
in light of that.
It's funny because you stole this question from me. So we're flipping back to the opposite.
I really want to know.
Yeah, it's such a great question. You know, early in my healing or pre-healing, when I was still living the cheetah 24/7 and not even knowing what that was, it was very difficult. So I will just put my trauma makers into two people. There's plenty more, but my mom and John, my ex-husband. And so I've well documented on this podcast the guilt and remorse that I felt when my mom died, because she stepped out into eternity and I never told her that I forgave her. And that bothered me for decades, Rachel, decades. The regret of not telling her that I forgave her, because I was 19. This version of me probably could process that a little bit more, even in an unhealthy way, in an unhealthy state. But at 19, it's still heavy as I'm telling you the story right now, that she stepped out into eternity thinking I hated her, that I wanted nothing to do with her. And so I'm at peace with that now, because I'm older and I've gotten help and all of the things. And then with John, unfortunately, when I left him, he didn't stop his trauma making in my life, if you will. Having lived through 12 years of domestic violence, when I left him. I drove from my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, back to where I went to college in Clearwater. And that's how I got back on this side of the state. And while he was still alive, before I had to file a restraining order on him, there was this deep desire to hear him say, I'm sorry. And he did. But I look back now and his last words to me were, I'm so sorry, when I went to leave the house with my sister and brother-in-law to get my stuff. And in a very manipulative way, as trauma makers often do, he called me outside and he pulled up his sunglasses so I could see his tears. And he said, I'm so sorry. Well, he did. That would have been great had he stopped there. But by the time when I moved to Clearwater, I had to have a lifetime restraining order filed against him, because he routinely was emailing me death threats. As a matter of fact, when I got out of the hospital from the psych ward, there were 7 or 8 emails, and Chrissy and Cheryl and my friend Michelle they were all looking at each other like, what do we do? And because Chrissy, for some reason, had logged into my computer and saw the emails and called, I think probably the first person she reached out to was Cheryl, and then my best friend Michelle from the children's home. What do we do? And so they had to tell me that they had to tell me about that when I got out of the hospital.
I remember that episode of you talking about that, where your memory of going over the bridge was completely different than
time of day, all of it. Yeah. It was just, I had literally gotten out of the psych ward and they had to say, and by the way, tomorrow we need to come back down to downtown Clearwater so you can file a restraining order, because John has given you death threats. Well, of course, that wasn't going to be good enough for me. I wanted to read the emails, and I did, which I regret to this day. And so he didn't give me an opportunity to grieve him until he died. And when he died of a drug overdose, when I tell you, texted my core people 3 words: John is dead. And I got various and sundry shocked replies.
Yeah.
Most of them were on their own group texts having a hallelujah party. And that night I will never forget. I will always remember when Peyton Manning retired, because he made me cry. And it wasn't about Peyton Manning's speech. I was sitting in my house one night watching the NFL Network. It was about April, right before the draft. And Peyton Manning was giving his retirement speech, and I just started to sob. And then I realized that I was just the depth of sorrow that I had when I found out that he died, and how he died in a hotel room with a needle in his arm by himself. There are no words, even on this day, for how that felt. And it wasn't about him. It was very different from my mom. It wasn't about that I hadn't forgiven him, or that it had nothing to do with that. It was like, this was a man who I deeply loved. Clearly, I married him. And while he hurt me deeply, I deeply loved him. And this was a human being who died. And I just remember picking up my phone that night and playing music, which is my go-to, and a song called Whiskey Lullaby by Alison Krauss and Brad Paisley came on. And if you listen to that song, it's about how the man drinks himself to death, basically, but when the wife leaves him. And so I just played it over and over and over and over and over. And the amount of tears that were collected by the Lord that day are immeasurable. And so I wish that I could have 2 minutes with each of them on this planet right now, so that I could say, I don't know what happened to you, and I forgave you a long time ago. I don't know what happened to you. I'm so sorry. That's what I would say to them. But I don't get that opportunity. Instead, I get these memories of both of them that are incomplete, which the brain just doesn't like. And so this is an issue. Mother's Day, really, really hate Mother's Day. Gosh, what are we in 2023? My 27th wedding anniversary is coming up at the end of this month. And that day's always hard for me too. And so from beyond the grave, they still affect me.
Yeah. Did you, the forgiveness, was it easier? Had you forgiven them already before they died?
Not my mom.
Was it easier to reach that point, do you think?
Yeah, I think at first I forgave her with the template, like with a cut and paste. This is what you do. This Ephesians 4:32, or all the verses in the Bible that we've talked about all season. My initial motivation for forgiving her was to cover up the immense guilt that I had for not telling her before she died. Much later, as I got healthier, my forgiveness of her was so that I think Willie probably had one of my favorite answers of the season as to what forgiveness means to him, when I no longer charge my pain to her account. And that's where I am on both of them. I no longer charge my pain to their account, because I know that for both of them to have done what they did, that something had to have been done to them. And so it's almost like God has given me this measure of grace for them. And I'm so grateful, because that's what he does for me. And so it's difficult. And I do hope I have a letter from my mom that she wrote me when I was in high school that said that she got saved. John was brought up Catholic, very, very, very mainstream, old school Catholic. And so he lived a very guilt-ridden life. And he did, right before he died, he was in Trinity Rescue Mission, Jacksonville, Florida, which is a ministry of Trinity Baptist Church. So I hope that he made a profession of faith. I hope that I get to see them one day, that day where there will be no more pain, no more tears, no more sorrow, no more this, right? So if I get to meet them and just give them a hug and say, I love you, Mom. I love you, John. I never stopped. That will be such a gift for me when I get to heaven. I don't know whether they're there. And so
what a picture to hold on to, though.
Yeah. I hope God gives that to me. Yeah.
I hope so too.
Yeah. So you're the opposite of me. Your trauma makers are still alive.
I am, yeah.
What's that like?
Oh, this is a tricky answer, I feel like.
Yeah. This is one we both prayed about a lot.
Quite literally, I have to take it one day, one response at a time, because I'm still in relationship with, the people that I will attach trauma maker to. Also hard to answer this question because of that.
Right.
But it's really, I feel like it's exhausting, if I'm being brutally honest. It's so exhausting. And there are some days where I wish, and this is horrible, but there are some days I wish where I was in your shoes. Because one of the things for me I find extremely hard about, the position that I'm in, is that things just keep happening. So it's not, I wish I could just look back and say, and, process through all of that. And that's another thing, like old things are resurfacing now for the first time, which they have been for a few years, but like, everybody who's healed knows that it's not linear and things will come up years later because you're
So
just
true.
continuous like learning of yourself and that self-improvement. But it's just a constant, and I'm getting ahead of myself. My brain is jumping around. Constant reminder that the reason why I still do talk to them, the only way I can do that, I have to recall what Jesus did for me.
Mm.
And I have to remember that. And I have to extend with boundaries, of course. I have placed boundaries because those are important and those are what allow us to love, to extend the love that we want to be able to extend. But I have to remember that. If I don't, I'll die.
Yeah.
Or if I don't, I would drown in bitterness. It would eat me up, and it would eat me up.
As you were talking, I was thinking, and this is not the psalm that we're getting ready to read, but first of all, my heart hurts with that answer because you know how much I adore you. But that psalm, that verse in Psalms, my flesh and my heart fails, but you, my Lord, are my strength and my portion forever.
Yes, because there are and I'm sure you relate to this too. There are so many days where you just get mad all over again.
Oh yeah.
And you're just, oh, I have to walk through this. It's like you have to keep forgiving them, keep forgiving them, keep forgiving them. And it's so good when you think of what Jesus did for you and it's still so hard and it still hurts so much. But to be able to have the Lord stand behind you and to empower you with that grace and that love that you would not have otherwise is a beautiful thing. And I can't deny that either, no matter how much it hurts.
I just wanted to say to those listening out there, the majority of whom their trauma makers are still alive. This is the only way you can live life. And like you said, boundaries, of course. And sometimes you might actually need to excommunicate, for lack of a better way to explain that or say that, because this has been such an emotionally charged podcast. I can't even find my words, which is very weird. Some people you might have to just cut out of your life, but I think that it's honoring to the Lord when we don't do that if we can.
Yes.
But
it's also okay if you have to.
That's right.
It's okay. It's okay.
And it's not, and that is not dishonoring to the Lord. That does not mean that you have not forgiven. No. That just means that you have to, I've been watching, this is a show that I don't even know it was on in the 90s, Third Watch, and I've been looking for it forever. And it's a show about police officers and firemen. And last night I was watching it, and there was a fire, and one of the firemen just about passed out because he was doing something that they call buddy breathing, which is instead of keeping his own mask on, he was sharing with somebody else. And I think that is what a lot of times those of you with your trauma makers still alive do. You buddy breathe a little bit. You kind of don't really take care of your own needs because society is telling you that if your trauma makers are in this and if they fall under this umbrella of relationships, then you have to have them in your life. And and that just isn't true. But how beautiful is it that the Lord does bring us into, if he calls us, and in your case, daily. And I'm also reminded of that. One of my friends says, strength by the moment, grace for the day. So yeah, in a lot of ways, your plight is difficult. And maybe I can even say more difficult than mine because you have relationships and these people are still breathing air. What I hope for you is that when they're not breathing air, that you don't feel like my answer.
And that's another thing I was thinking of while you were answering, is that I still have that opportunity that you don't. And so it just made me think
I don't
Just
want you
made
to
me
live with,
think.
I don't want you to live with regret, but I also want you to talk to a real professional about
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
But there are people out there listening that have their trauma makers that are still alive, and we are no way saying that we want you to walk into, and that's not what this season has been about, this forgiveness season. This is actually the season finale. That's not what this season has been about. This season has been about, like, forgiveness sucks, but it is required of us. It is not an option. It is a command. And that is really hard to say, because we are two people who probably have earned the right, if there was such a thing, to not forgive somebody. But the fact of the matter is that Jesus died on the cross for our sins so that we could forgive, so that we could lean into his grace. And that leads me into Psalm 91, which is our favorite psalm. Well, I don't know if it's my favorite psalm, but it's definitely that PTSD psalm.
Definitely a good one.
So we're going to close out the podcast by reading that, and we're going to split it. And then we're going to talk about the favorite verse or verses from Psalm 91. So I flip the mic over to you, my friend, to begin reading Psalm 91.
Okay. Sounds good. Start in verse 1. The one who lives under the protection of the Most High dwells in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say concerning the Lord, who is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. He himself will rescue you from the bird trap, from the destructive plague. He will cover you with his feathers. You will take refuge under his wings. His faithfulness will be a protective shield. You will not fear the terror of the night, the arrow that flies by day, the plague that stalks in the darkness, or the pestilence that ravages at noon. Though 1,000 fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, the pestilence will not reach you. You will only see it with your eyes and witness the punishment of the wicked.
If you make the Most High your dwelling, even the Lord, who is my refuge, then no harm will befall you, no disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all of your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that they will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread upon the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver and honor him. With a long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. So as we close out, Rachel, what's your favorite part of Psalm 91?
Oh, good. Verse 4. I love verse 4. He will cover you with his feathers. You will take refuge under his wings. His faithfulness will be a protective shield. But real quick, tying back to that, if we jump back to verse 1, I have a Spurgeon Bible, and he has like little excerpts in the word, and there's one that I read right before this that I just want to share. It says, when you walk with a friend in certain positions of the sun, your friend's shadow falls on you, but you cannot expect to have the shadow of your friend unless you are near him. We read in the song, I delight to sit in his shade. There must be nearness to get under the shadow. So there must be with him. There must be something of the assurance of faith before we can grip such a word as what follows in this psalm. So the nearness of the Lord to get under that shadow. And I just loved that picture of walking next to him and you are in his shadow. But his faithfulness will be a protective shield. That is something that has rung true throughout my entire life, even before my healing journey, just in other things. He has always been my shield. And what's really ringing in my head right now is just how much he's protected me against bitterness and resentment, because, oh gosh, I don't even want to know where I would be if I had allowed some of the things that, or if he hadn't been there and I had allowed some of the things that have tried to grip my heart, if I had allowed them to take root and I'd let them sit there and let them fester. But he comes after me every time and he just keeps nagging me, not in a bad way, but he's faithful.
Yeah.
He always shows up.
And it's so hard for those of us who've been through, it's hard for everybody to grasp that concept. the NIV, I love the NIV adds a word to that verse that you love so much. It will be my rampart. And that's a strong war word, right? Like
Yes.
that's going to war, like he's going to be my rampart. But I'm so proud of you for fighting the bitterness and resentment. I'm so grateful for a group of people that you have around you and that you had around you when we first met by way of your life group at church. I love it when you're on the podcast because it's always well listened to because of all of them. And so shout out to them. Shout out to the
I tried to
community.
leave them a couple times and they always stuck by me.
Yeah. Shout out to that group of people. And you know who you are if you're listening to this.
Absolutely.
Well, it's very difficult for me to pick my favorite, but definitely you will not fear the arrows by day or the pestilence by night. That was especially true for me when I was having PTSD flashbacks. And I don't have those as much anymore because I've processed some of that trauma. But my favorite one, especially on this day, on June 12th, 2023, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all of your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that will not strike your foot against a stone. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. And I will go out swinging, Rachel. I will go out swinging, Rachel, because the enemy wants my story. He wants your story. He wants our hearts to be bitter. He wants us to not forgive. And just the promise that the Lord would give the angels command concerning me. Now that could serve to be a problem too, right? Because, well, if that's true, then why do I have all this trauma? That's a whole nother podcast. But he will tell his angels what to do to concern me and to protect me. That is so precious to me. And so I want to thank you for being here today. This is probably hands down my favorite episode I've ever recorded. It's been so organic. And guys, we just want to highlight the completed work of Jesus on the cross as we close this season on forgiveness. We want to highlight what he did for us and how he handled himself. And remember the garden moments. Remember they're okay. And for those of you that don't know what I mean by garden moments, the Garden of Gethsemane, where he sat before he died and his community was asleep. And he begged the Father that this cup be passed from him. And it wasn't. And he died for us. And his blood spilled on that hill and on Calvary so that Rachel and me and anybody else out there dealing with stuff that we're dealing with have such hope, because like Rachel said, he is so faithful. I thought of a verse when you were reading all that commentary, the verse where I believe it's in Hebrews that says, draw near to God and he'll draw near to you. Yeah. And so, well, thank you for being here today, Rachel. And as we close out the season on forgiveness, I'm looking forward to being on the other side of the microphone with you a little bit over the summer as we go through Psalms. And I just love you and adore you. I'm so proud of you. And keep fighting.
You too.
All right, guys, we will be back in 2 weeks. It's going to be a little bit of a switch up. The drop will be on Friday of that week, as the person that I wanted to round out PTSD Awareness Month is Lauren Starnes, who is a physician's assistant in my psychiatrist's office. And she is going to come talk to us about when the body talks. And she was the one that I alluded to earlier in the episode, where I just went through 30 days of the grounding, feeding, hydration, movement, and sleep. She's going to come talk to us about when the body talks. It's been really life-changing for me, and I think that I'm going to see some fruit of my work with her. And so, but we will drop that episode on Friday, so it'll be Fridays with Watson that week. But I wanted to get it into PTSD Awareness Month. And so as I close the podcast, I do every time, Rachel, I especially proclaim this over you. I adore you, but more than that, you are seen, you are known, you are heard, you are loved, and you are valued. See you guys in 2 weeks.
You have pulled me out from the depths. You have saved me from certain death. You have shown yourself faithful to me over and over, Jesus. So let my life glorify you and teach me to walk beside you. And I want to be more like you. So let my life be yourself fade